Basic Instinct is a 1992 neo-noir erotic thriller film directed by Paul Verhoeven and written by Joe Eszterhas. The film follows San Francisco police detective Nick Curran, played by Michael Douglas, who's investigating the brutal murder of a wealthy rock star. During the investigation, Curran becomes involved in a torrid and intense relationship with the prime suspect, Tramell, played by Sharon Stone, an enigmatic writer. Eszterhas developed the script in the 1980s. It became a subject of a bidding war until Carolco Pictures acquired the rights to the film. From there, Verhoeven signed on to direct, and Douglas was then cast. Douglas initially recommended Kim Basinger for the role of Tramell, but Basinger declined. He also proposed Julia Roberts, Greta Scacchi, and Meg Ryan, but they also all turned down the role. Verhoeven even considered Demi Moore, until he chose Stone, who was eventually selected for the role, who was a relative unknown until the success of the film, but had previously worked with Verhoeven on Total Recall. Verhoeven said her quick change of emotion before her character was killed in Total Recall prompted him to select her for the part. Before its release, Basic Instinct generated controversy due to its overt sexuality and violence, including a rape scene. Gay rights activists criticized the film's depiction of homosexual relationships and the portrayal of a bisexual woman as a murderous psychopath. Gay rights activists protested during filming, saying it followed a pattern of negative depictions of homosexuals in film. Members of the lesbian and bisexual activist group Labia protested against the film on its opening night. Others also picketed outside theatres to dissuade people from attending screenings, carrying signs like "Kiss My Ice Pick" and "Catherine did it, save your money, the bisexual did it." Verhoeven himself defended the group's right to protest, but did criticize the disruptions, saying, "Fascism is not raising your voice, the fascism is not accepting the no." Famed film critic Roger Ebert mentioned the controversy in his review, saying, "As for allegedly offensive homosexual characters, the movie's protesters might take note that the fact that this film's heterosexuals, starting with Douglas, are equally offensive. Still, there is a point to be made about Hollywood's unremitting insistence of typecasting homosexuals, particularly lesbians, as twisted and evil." The film was also criticized for glamorizing cigarette smoking. Screenwriter Joe Eszterhas was later diagnosed with throat cancer and publicly apologized for glamorizing smoking in his films. Since the release of the film, Stone alleged multiple times that a scene in which her vulva was exposed as she crossed her legs was filmed without her knowledge. In her Inside the Actor Studio interview in 1998, Stone said of the experience that while she was initially angry, she realized the director's decision was the right one, saying, "I thought about it for a few days and I knew in my heart he was right. I hated that it existed. I hated it more that he stole it from me instead of allowing me to choose. But he was right." Verhoeven would later respond, saying that was impossible and she knew exactly what we were doing. However, despite having a radically different memory about the particular scene, he praised Stone's performance and said they're on good terms. Actress Jeanne Tripplehorn, who plays Dr. Beth Gardner in the film, maintains that the notorious scene in which her character and Douglas had a brutal bruising sex was somewhat lighter when described to her by Verhoeven before shooting began. Basic Instinct premiered in Los Angeles on March 18, 1992, and was released in the United States by TriStar Pictures on March 20th of 1992. It received mixed reviews from critics who praised the performances on its cast, original score and editing, but criticized its writing and character development. Despite these reviews and public protests, Basic Instinct was a box office success, grossing $352 million worldwide, making it the fourth highest grossing film of 1992, behind Disney's Aladdin, The Bodyguard, and Home Alone 2, Lost in New York. Several versions of the film have been released in videocassette, DVD, Blu-ray, and including a director's cut with extended footage previously unseen in North American cinemas. The film was later recognized for its groundbreaking depictions of sexuality in mainstream Hollywood cinema. One scholar described the film as a neo-noir film masterpiece that plays with and transgresses the narrative rules of film noir. A sequel released 14 years later, Basic Instinct 2, also starred Stone and was made without Verhoeven's involvement. The sequel received negative reviews and was relatively unsuccessful. Now, this was a film I'd always wanted to see. I recall seeing about it as a child when the film was initially released and always being tempted to go and see what was all the fuss about. Of course, watching it the other day for the first time, I can really see why it does stand out, particularly of its time. Of course, now with the way films are made, they're just so much more in your face, as it were. Seeing sex on screen or violence is not uncommon these days in modern filmmaking, but back then, this film really broke new ground because it didn't shy away from sex. Instead, it embraced it fully and put forward this fascinating character in Tramell. The film definitely echoes a bit of work of Alfred Hitchcock, but Basic Instinct contains a star-making performance here from Sharon Stone. For me, this is a guilty pleasure film. It's like a cinematic wet dream, if you will, and it delivers the goods, particularly with Sharon Stone, who really struts her stuff on screen and just oozes sex appeal in every aspect of her performance. She's incredibly sensual and sexy in one aspect, but also incredibly ruthless and cold in another. Douglas is also solid here as Nick Curran, the complicated character that definitely walks the fine line between being a good cop and a male ego chauvinist. And of course the scene where he brutally has sex with his ex-girlfriend leaves you with a question: did he go too far, and was this consensual? I think it's done in the film on purpose, as this whole film is about questioning your moral stance on things, on what is going too far and what is right and wrong. The chemistry between Douglas and Stone is fantastic, and it really sizzles on screen, and I really feel that's a big part in why this film really worked. This film has earned its classic status because of its sensuality, the way it pushes the boundaries, particularly in 1992, of sexuality, and of course the most infamous scene of all scenes, namely the leg cross. Verhoeven challenged the norms of Hollywood at the time, creating an adult-themed, somewhat sexually explicit film, with a femme fatale of note here in Catherine Tramell. A lot of the film is based on suggestion. These days we are so used to being exposed to all types of visuals, but back then it really does just play on the idea of leaving the viewer wanting more, and really does lure you in. Fundamentally, this is a murder mystery film carried by a strong performance here by Stone, who uses her feminine wit and charm to play the atypical male in Nick. It's a sensual neo-noir thriller with fantastic chemistry from the two leads and an outstanding performance here by Stone, who really carries the film on her back and really was a high point in her career. Verhoeven's directing here is also on point, as he creates an erotic atmospheric tension within the whole film, and his directing really does bring out the best in both actors. Sensual, erotic, fascinating, and groundbreaking for its time, with a fantastic performance here by Sharon Stone and electric chemistry between Douglas and herself. Basic Instinct gets a 9 out of 10.